success comes from, foundationally, I want to enjoy what I'm doing every day. And that's what real estate creates, the wealth to give you that freedom to not have to do things you don't want to do. But
Right.
now I'm starting to see success as the ability to help others improve their situation.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I am here today with another great guest. We got Chris Hanson in the house, CEO and founder of Hanson Capital Group. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Yona. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me today.
My pleasure. It's quite a treat. We have mutual friends and get to meet someone new in the real estate world that I'm not too familiar with. So I'd love to kind of hear your story. And for our listeners as well, who aren't too familiar with who you are, one thing that I do know that is always fascinating to me is that you've been around in the real estate world for quite a while. So it means you've seen some cycles, which is always a breath of fresh air these days.
There are a lot of guys who come in quick and fast, and it's an easy game if you spend 20 years learning, right?
Exactly, right. The overnight success that takes 20 years.
Right? Just took 20 years to get rich quick in real estate. Yeah. I mean, I'll go back to the start.
I'd love to hear the start. Like just let us know how you got started. Obviously, you're in real estate. You've been around for, 20 plus years. Love to hear where you got your start, because everyone has something that kind of pushes them in that direction.
Yeah. Well, kind of when I decided to go buy the first piece of property was back in 2008. I had been in mortgage banking, wholesale packages of mortgages through the mid 2000s, slowed down rather abruptly, as most of us recall. And a girl I was dating at the time, her dad was a real estate developer, and we were sitting on his boat in San Diego, and he was kind of talking about, well, I got to figure out a new career because it wasn't working right. And I was thinking, I need to figure out a new career too. Banking's not looking so hot right now. And he said, if I were starting over, which he effectively was, he would be looking at the foreclosure sales. And at the time, the trustee sales going on in Phoenix, Arizona, which is where my home base was at the time. I went to the foreclosure auction. I actually cash advanced one of my credit cards and bought the first property for $36,000.
Oh.
Hired guys off of Craigslist to, do your paint and carpet style rehab, because I'd read a book that said, don't ever pick up a hammer unless you want to work for what you can pay guys to swing hammers for. So I sat there and watched them work, and it actually moved pretty quick. I bought a few, and at that time we were paying people at the trustee sale a fee. It was $3,000, like a success fee. So they'd stand there at the courthouse and make the bid for you. I bought 3 of them because, these houses were 20, 30 grand in 1 month. And I realized that $9,000 was too much to hand somebody to stand outside for 3 hours. And I went and I bought a Prius. I wrapped it in a foreclosure bidding service. I made some marketing, I made some flyers, and I started driving around at 4 a.m. to all the houses that were coming to that day's auction. And I undercut the market by half. I made a $1,500 bid service called investazhouses.com.
Wow.
And that was basically the entry to real estate.
Wow.
From there, that's how I created the job. That was the income to support myself while I was buying houses. I was not good at flipping houses. In fact, I probably would have been bankrupt had that service business not started, because the first few houses I flipped, I wasn't good at it. I still don't claim to be good at it. I bought the first apartment building in 2009, and that's where the light bulb kind of went off. Income producing property is preferable to me than the vacant house that you're waiting for a market to show up for.
And say multifamily, how big was that first property?
Well, this is a really big deal, and the broker is still one of my best friends. I paid $72,000 for a 7-unit on about 2.5 acres. It was 3 single-family homes and a fourplex, like an attached fourplex, in Buckeye, Arizona. And it took me about 1.5 years to sell it, but I got $195,000 out of it. So, it was fairly successful. No debt at that time. I remember being a little nervous when I bought that first multifamily property, because that was an intimidating thing to face. I bought it March of 2009. Prior purchaser, I bought it REO, a broker at CBRE sold it to me, but he had sold it to the prior group in July of 2008 for $630,000.
What?
Now I bought it off the bank for $72,000.
That's
And I
crazy.
remember sending that wire and thinking, man, I really hope I can figure this out because this is all the money in the world to me right now. And I was like, well, if somebody else just lost 600 grand, I could lose the 70. Like at that time, not having a lot of real estate knowledge, I was concerned that I hope I didn't mess it up. And it kind of took the residential, renovation, paint and carpet type stuff, fixed it up, filled it up, sold it. And that was the first commercial deal. That bidding service, you want me to keep going
Yeah,
on
when you say bidding
professional
service, like
there?
what exactly was that? You were going on behalf of other people to the auctions, or you were just going to the owners before it could get to the auction?
Yeah, great clarification. I was providing a service to real estate investors to be their representative at the auction. So
Gotcha.
instead of paying somebody else $3,000, there was kind of a good old boys network in Phoenix. There's 6, 8 guys that bought everything. Some of them on behalf of clients, some of them just there kind of effectively wholesaling, buying at the auction, reselling, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So I created a new competitor in the space at half the market price and started taking some market share and created that bidding service. We ended up getting an institutional customer, a New York hedge fund that a lot of people would know the name of. They added some scale to that. We expanded it into some other markets. So that service business ultimately, was pretty good. But this is really back in the days when like Invitation Homes, big publicly traded Blackstone venture, Blackstone backed one of my competitors at the time, still friends of mine over there at that group, and with $1 billion check. And
Wow.
the group we were working with had a smaller check, but we still did well. But my residential stuff, I mean, I learned within a year. I was not good at it. It wasn't for me. I was all in on apartments, and we did apartments, back in the days when you could pay $10,000 or $20,000 a door. I mean, it was a
That's
nice time in
crazy.
Phoenix.
Yeah.
The
What
only
Phoenix
regret
now is
there is,
probably like 300-400 a door, right?
yeah, I mean, it's taken a little bit of a back step the last few years with interest rates, but the last deal I sold, multi-deal, was May of 22. I sold an 86 unit for 308 a door.
Right.
I had bought that building in 18 for 59 a door.
That's crazy.
So, and then now I did a pretty extensive renovation.
Of course, but still, that's some pretty good return on investment.
Yeah, it was a condo project. I had to take it down in tranches. I bought the more recent ones. I had a higher price, but I ended up dissolving the HOA and turning it into a single asset again, and there was a market for that.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing.
Yeah.
So until now, you're from that point where you found multifamily apartments was your thing. Did you go full
Right.
force into that, or were you still running a service business on the side as well?
I shut the service business down in 14, and I had some really smart customer. It was a great business for me because I got to deal with real estate investors, and within a few years they started calling and asking me what they should do as if I were the expert, which I'd never pretended to be. But we had a lot of transaction volume. We were doing, I think we did about 2,000 residential homes across a handful of states,
Hmm.
pretty short order. What ended up happening was the multifamily stuff. I thought the pricing was getting out of hand, and I was only buying on my own account. So there was no investors. I provided a service to those investors when I was bidding, but all my real estate investments and wealth creation was just for me. I wasn't intending to be a general partner or a sponsor. I was just buying real estate.
Right.
And I was transacting a lot, buy, improve, resell,
Gotcha.
because I started with a credit card. I didn't have any
Yeah.
cash.
Hmm.
Had I been able to buy and hold those units like I was helping other people do, that would have been a nice outcome. But I had to generate some capital to be able to go convert.
Right.
So in about 16, I had decided that I was done with the transactional business. I had about 17 people in the business helping wholesale, fix and flip, and value add apartments. Again, just for my personal account. I kind of wound that down and said, I'm just going to convert to some assets and hold long term. I'm tired of having to repeat and go create the new dollars every day. I'm going to switch, and I'm going to take a step back from an income perspective to do it. But it's a transition I want to make. So if I buy something, it's going to be to hold it. And as I moved down
a
that
good time
path,
to do it.
yeah,
Right.
it worked pretty good. I started taking money in that multifamily deal I mentioned that I sold at 300 a door. I had a couple friends that asked if they could participate. So I took some money. And then in 18, I wanted to do more deals and I didn't have the money. So I sent some emails out and started raising money. And we ended up launching our first industrial fund in 2020. Backstory to how I got into industrial. The value add multifamily game's a lot of work. And I was very involved at an individual level. I wanted a smaller staff. I didn't want to be managing those I'll say babysitting some of the stuff because my organization wasn't as organized as it is today. When we started taking external money, I started to build out the staff because I'd had some great successes with real estate deals and it effectively converted to a single family office. And that's the basics or the backbone of our company today. Today, we've got 24 people on staff, full vertical integration, banking, property management, legal, CPAs, everything we need to do to find, source, operate, execute is internal. And when I started buying industrial and triple net assets, that's where I really started to see the opportunity. Now, mind you, this is 18, 19 at this point.
Okay.
I had been a multi guy, and that was a pretty competitive space. You know, a lot of money has multifamilies become more and more popular over the
And it
last
keeps,
decade.
yeah, and it keeps getting more popular, right?
And
Yeah.
in 19, I bought the second industrial, and I was sitting there in my office and I was looking at these buildings where I could buy an in-place 7 cap. And this is 19, we're probably like mid 4 caps in Phoenix on multifamily stuff.
Multifamily, sure.
Now we could borrow agency debt in the low threes, maybe three and a
Right.
quarter, but a pro forma 4 to 4.5 is not a lot of arbitrage to live on. And I could buy these industrial buildings for in place 7 caps. The debt was a little more expensive because it wasn't agency. So maybe I was closer to 4% cost of capital, but I had a 3-point arbitrage and I had an in place 7 cap. And I knew the in place rents that were there were well below market. So when I'm talking to people today and I'm explaining our industrial products, I say, picture a apartment building where the market rent's $1,000 a door or 1,000 a unit, but the in-place rents today are $250 a door.
Right.
Except you can't just go turn those rents this year because there's 2, 3, 5, 7-year leases in play. But if you could buy an in-place 7 on actual income, and it's triple net, so there's no maintenance, there's no insurance, there's no tax liability. It's just a simple arbitrage. We understand it's very predictable, consistent cash flow. It was like just a big light bulb. I actually, when I started raising money for this, I put a presentation that had like a T-chart. And it said, multi, we're paying, 150% replacement cost. Industrial, we're paying half replacement cost. Multi, we're buying pro forma 4.5 caps. We've got a 1-point arbitrage to our debt cost. Industrial, we're buying actual 7 cap and we can triple the income in 3 years, and it was just like so obvious.
So why do you think there are not more people like syndicating and doing industrial deals? Is it just because it's not as sexy, or is just there's more competition with bigger, larger players, or what's the real reason behind that? Or maybe not enough inventory?
You've got a wide audience, so I want to be careful. I don't need to scream from the hilltops here. No, there has been a lot more guys who've rushed in.
Sure.
I had a pretty incredible phase where I was like the only guy if an industrial property was coming on the market in Phoenix, there's a dozen great teams in Phoenix that work industrial. 5 or 6 of them would send it to me the same day. So we just set up a system where whoever sends it to us first, we're allegiances or, we're very loyal to all of our brokers. I attribute a lot of my success to those relationships.
Yeah.
If you send it to me first, you're my buyer rep on it. If you bring it to me, I'm going to resell it through you. That has changed. Now there's 20, 30 groups at every industrial deal, similar to multi. So off market, some of that stuff from my earlier years, residential consumer marketing and stuff is more important. But to answer your question, it is not as simple of a concept for people. And I'm speaking to the high net worth LPs. Obviously, the institutional interest is there. It's a very hot sector and has been.
Sure.
But when it comes to those conversations that I'm having with individuals to explain an industrial asset, which I would equate very similarly to a value add multifamily strategy, just a different underlying asset and a longer lease duration and triple net. So we don't have to worry about our roofs and ACs and that kind of stuff in a capacity. They operate very similarly, but myself included, when I was walking through these industrial properties for the first time, it's like they hand you a hard hat when you walk through a manufacturing facility. It's like, what is this? I've never needed this to go tour an apartment building.
Right.
So there's definitely like a component that, as you said, it's not as sexy. I don't think people have the same pride of, hey, I own that Class A building at Main and Main, because the industrial property is a different market.
Because also the tenants are, it's very different in terms of just the relationships you have. Multifamily, you're providing a home for families, right? You are basically, have a community that you're responsible for. industrial
Right.
these are businesses, they're factories, they're distribution centers, whatever it is. But these are just, you have a tenant and, it's their business owner. So it's a much different feel. I definitely relate to that.
Yeah. And I still own multi. Like I build B2R product. I built a 128 home community in Dallas that finished into 23. And I teach my kids, we own real estate because we're providing housing and then these people pay our mortgages. My kids have been taught from they're 10, 11 and 14. They've grown up around real estate. There's definitely some pride in helping our community in that capacity. We're improving communities,
Hmm.
especially with the value add component. But I see industrial the same way, although we're providing the workplace for the members of our community, right? Because
Sure.
especially with where we're focused now, which is small bay multi-tenant industrial parks. That's what I'm going on record with you saying that's going to be the best investment at 25. We can expand on why, but we are still improving our community and we're taking a similar approach, creating a better real estate
Mm.
facility for them. It's not super innovative. Like we're not reinventing the wheel, but we're
Right.
improving efficiency. We're making them better products. And these are where people house their business. Those B2B relationships are a lot less, I'll say, emotional and a lot less headaches from an operational standpoint than at the apartments. We don't get the stories about rent being late on, the third and or the 10th or whatever it is as much. But the asset class itself is something I've really grown to appreciate in a way that it's taken a number of years that I didn't initially see. And that's something that I lead with as a value add to our customers today is I don't have pride in saying I own Main and Main, but I'll take a, 25% cash on cash return in an asset that other people are overlooking
For
over,
sure.
6 or 7 I'd get out of owning Main and Main. Do you want to count the money or do you want to brag about where it was sourced from?
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that. And it sounds like you're investing in the community in locally. You're in Phoenix, greater Phoenix area. I mean, are you
Yeah,
buying
we're in
deals
6
outside as
states.
well? Or you're in 6 states?
Yeah. So we're in Texas, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, and California.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so what we did is the strategy that we've come up with, we like it, works well for us. Rather than change our underwriting guidelines or minimums, I'm the lead investor. This is where the family office comes in. So biggest check writer on every deal we've done. And that likely won't continue as our deal size gets up. My personal capital won't be able to stretch and be the biggest guy in every deal going forward. But it's something I believe in as a product type, and I lead with my dollars. So it makes it a pretty easy discussion. And my executive team is aligned around that. Their comp plans, they're heavily invested as well in what we
Hmm.
do. So we believe in the thesis, and that's below market rents and below replacement cost generally plays out. But rather than lower those thresholds, we expanded the geography.
Makes sense.
That's what led to that. I mean, we've grown and shrank as a company over the years, but today those 6 states were active. We've got 6 guys in the acquisition team that manage about 1,400 brokers among those states. And that's multi-strategy in terms of the brokers. That's multifamily guys and various commercial guys, but because we're also a lender. So
Oh, okay.
we
Doing a lot.
eat, sleep, breathe real estate. We're very niched and focused on our industrial strategy,
Hmm.
but our experience from those other categories that's been opportunistic over the years, you don't lose that skill set, right? We look for things that are mispriced, go figure out if there's value add that we can force. We're not relying on the market. And
Hmm.
then that's the way I like to invest. I think the risk adjusted return profile, when you can force appreciation with under market rents, it's a very simple play. It's not rocket science, but it's a lot better when we follow that up with macroeconomic trends, population, all that other type of stuff that you'd expect a wise investor to do.
Sure. And, all but California, the other markets you mentioned are all population growth markets.
Yeah. Yeah. So I say that a lot. And when I mention California, I usually say there's an asterisk to California, and that's where I'm residing as we speak. The California got hurt in the industrial market, whereas Arizona and Texas have not over the last couple of years. I mean, 25%, 30%. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of stuff in California that they continue to make decisions that is leading to their population decline.
Yep.
That being said, it's not like we can move the Port of Long Beach to Texas or
Right.
Arizona, right? Like industrial real estate at the Port of Long Beach will persevere. So we view that
Sure.
as on sale right now. That being said, I don't have an acquisition in hand that I'm jumping at, but it doesn't mean we quit shopping.
Sure.
You know,
No, it
you
makes
got to be in
sense.
the market to recognize when it shows up.
Absolutely. And that makes total sense. There are certain locations that will always be profitable because there's
Right.
always going to be demand, and
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense.
So the small bay sector in particular, why I'm such a fan of that right
Yeah, I'd
now.
love to hear about that.
So we haven't really built it for a while. And do you know what I say or what I mean when I'm talking about like a small bay multi-tenant park? It's like kind
I
of a
do,
retail
but I'd love for you
storefront on the
for our
front.
listeners to explain a little what you mean.
Yeah. You know what? I'll at our website on hansonre.com, I will reference something to your show that if people want to check it out, they can see it. And I'll put a summary of some stuff together there.
Cool.
But these small bay facilities are low density by nature. Because
Mhm.
think if you had a 10-acre parcel and you were going to build a multifamily community, you'd maximize your number of units, right? And then maximize your revenue opportunity. Well, all of the industrial, not all, I should say, the vast majority of the industrial development that's been so much in the news is these giant distribution facilities.
Right.
And those guys are buying big parcels. It's institutional backed, which we work with a lot of institutions. So we're very in tune with what they like and what they don't and why all the time. They can't recreate this product because it'd be like buying that 10-acre parcel and only building on 20% of it because you've got these drive aisles and you're going to have roll-up doors in the back and kind of a retail storefront on the front, but it's like these long rectangular buildings
Right.
and they're inherently low lot coverage. So it's not what we're focused on building. And we love to go find those infill, in the center of town. So since they're old and they're not generally institutionally liked from a individual asset basis because they're too small and managerially intensive, what we've done is just what we did with the houses back in the day. We're finding them, assembling them into an institutional package, and then going out and reselling it. Because an institution will write a $100 million check to buy, 300,000 feet of it,
Right.
where it's stabilized across 8 properties and you're managing it. But they'd never go compete on the individual deals
Right.
to buy those from us. So
Gotcha.
we
So you're
make sure
putting them
the deal
together.
stands on. What's that?
So you're putting them together. You're finding smaller individual deals and putting them together as a larger package. Sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. That assemblage strategy, there's a lot of exits there. You could put it into a REIT. You could do an UPREIT. You can sell the assembled thing to or to an institution. Meanwhile, it's an asset class that stabilizes today between, I'll say, an 8 and a 10 yield, which I can't reproduce that in multi. If I could, I'd be buying multi today. So we're kind of selectively aware rather than just saying, hey, this is what we do and this is the only thing we do. We're constantly running the math to make sure we like that profile. But when you've got a product that's not being built, you've got no new supply coming online, and then you've got population shift to the rest of the states I mentioned, this product supports rooftops. It's your kind of service residential type users. It's all the small businesses that support your HVAC vendors, contractors. DoorDash is under LOI to potentially be a tenant for us on one of the properties because everything's local, last mile now. So
Right.
our consumer demands have shifted. Now we want things delivered this afternoon instead of next week. So those big, massive distribution facilities at each coast no longer cut it. Amazon signed 2,500 leases over the last, I think it's the last decade for facilities around the U.S.
Right.
Not 2 massive ones,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, their facilities are still pretty big, but comparatively, but yeah, they're buying a
Absolutely.
lot smaller ones.
Yeah. And you've got these places where we're talking about there's a housing shortage. Well, we're building housing and we're short supplied. So these guys that support those rooftops need a place. So with a lack of new supply and an ever-growing demand, you get a supply-demand imbalance. That's why it's the only sector within industrial where rents are still climbing as opposed to declining.
That's
So
amazing.
it's real basic, macroeconomic stuff.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, what's most surprising is that, and again, you mentioned we do have a big listenership and a lot of people may be jumping on this, but the fact is that it's a much lesser, known, I wouldn't say necessarily known, but you don't hear about it as much in terms of institutional. I mean, I definitely know people. We've had several people on the show discuss industrial in various forms and one another. But in fact, one of my mentors is a very successful developer in industrial distribution centers. So you may actually probably know his name, very, very big in the industry. But it's something that you have to kind of really be in that niche. It's not just like, okay, I'll buy multifamily and also industrial and also some this, that.
You don't stumble into it like
Exactly.
that. Most people really understand the renting of residential property as a business model. I mean, it's not rocket science, and the yields reflect that. There's less guys there. And
But it's also, I think, a natural progression for people who start out in single family like yourself in fix and
Yeah,
flips, which a lot of people do. They transition, they move into multifamily because it's the logical next step, the logical progression, which is probably why you have so many more people moving in that
yeah,
direction as opposed to some other asset class within commercial real estate. It just, I think, doesn't have that same approach from, go from buying a single family or a condo or whatever and then go buy a shopping mall. Like, it's
right.
not a logical progression for a lot of people.
And me, when I bought the first one at 18, I had been in mortgage banking for almost 5 years and I had 10 years of real estate experience. And I remember walking that first property with a broker that's a great friend that I trust a lot. And he's going, Hanson, trust me, you need to buy this building. And I'm like, gosh, Pete, I don't know. Like, I don't really get it. Like, I don't know what this is. And actually, I still own that building because I'm not generally a big seller. That building cash flows 69% a year today. I paid 2.8 million for this building. I had the seller carry 2 million. I put 800 down. And we've repeated this 100 times. Guys sell their manufacturing business and they keep the real estate. But when they're selling their business, they kind of shoot themselves in the foot with their occupancy cost. So they'll sign a below market lease because that adds some profitability into the operating company. Now they're locked into a lease, which the buyer of the company wants to make sure their occupancy cost is
Right.
held. So we'll do it's a sale lease back is frequently what
Sure.
happens, right? And then, well, that guy now doesn't really want to be a landlord. And then he realizes his real estate is not worth maybe as much as the market would bear because he signed a below market lease. So that's where we step in. And oftentimes we'll buy them from the business owner. We'll initiate the sale lease back. We'll let them pick their rent. We'll give them a 5-year lease because we're patient. I'll give you 5 years. And I did a ton of these in 20 and they're rolling now. And I mean, at the time they were 20, 30% below rental rates. Now they're a third of market rental rate. So these buildings that I was buying for 3-4, that example I gave you, it's in a market, an assembled portfolio JLL has in the market for me today. 9 properties, 34 million basis, 12 of equity, 22 of debt. We're fielding offers from institutions in the low 70s. So that 12 has become about 50 in 4 years. Now we'll exchange into more product like what I'm talking about.
Sure.
But that assemble these parts, works great in the specific sector I'm talking about. We don't see those rents declining, which has really been what's hurt multi. It's not just interest rates. It's been rents going backwards to some extent, right? And we're still seeing rent improvement, which means we've got runway is what we believe, at least until we start overbuilding it. But infill, because it's local. So we feel like I'm not going to go so far as like self-storage where it's full inelastic demand kind of thing.
Sure.
But it feels like a insulated area, which is why we're leaning in so heavy.
Yeah. And I do believe, and I do agree with you that there's still a lot of room left to grow in the industry across multiple states, especially in those areas where you are getting more population growth because the more population growth, the more you're going to need these last mile services, the more you're going to need that small bay industrial. It makes sense. It all kind of adds up.
And once we start talking to people about it, because we're actively raising, we're in our third fund right now. So I'm having a lot of calls. People realize they do get it. They do understand it. A lot of people view this specific asset class as kind of like the incubator, first business. A lot of guys I've talked to said, I remember my first warehouse was like one of these products. Like it's entry level small businesses, basically. Because, our average bay size is like 5,000 feet on a lot of these, but you can't just go buy one. I mean, there's some infrastructure you need to operate it effectively.
Makes sense. Well, Chris, I'd love to transition now to what we call the final 4. These are 4 questions I ask all my guests. The first one to you is, what's the worst job that you ever had?
My first job was bagging groceries at Albertsons, a grocery store chain on the West Coast in the US. And my dad had done it in college before he went off into his business, and his brother still works in the grocery store. And he said, I want you to go try this. This is why you need to work hard in school, or you're going to end up like his brother. Nothing against working in the grocery business, obviously, but it ended poorly. I was fired within about 3 weeks because my manager, I remember when he let me go, he said, you're just not going to amount to anything if you can't get your shit together. Because I was not putting the, cold things with the right, like I was smashing things. I'm like, I'm putting groceries in the bag. Like, what am I doing wrong here? And he's like, you're not getting it. Like, we tell you, you got to do this. And, you're, this, I'm worried about your future, basically, was what this guy told me as he let me go. So
Wow.
it was a job, because it was my first job, and that was a blow to the confidence, obviously. Like, man, if I can't do this, maybe this guy's right. I'm not going to amount to anything.
That's
So that was
unfortunate.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unfortunate, but definitely a life lesson learned there for sure.
absolutely.
Second question, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
You know, it's probably cliche, but Kiyosaki and Sharon Lecter wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I read that in college and wanted to go get into real estate out of college. Sharon actually came down. I was at the U of A in the entrepreneurship program and spoke to us. And it was an impactful thing, but I had already read the book, and that was the other driver towards real estate. I went to go get into real estate out of college, and it's like, yeah, you're going to bang a phone, all day, 200 calls. And I didn't have the money to be able to do that. So I went in mortgage banking adjacent.
Mhm. Right. Makes sense. And it's such an impactful book. And we've had a lot of people, it is cliche in a way, but because it's had such a powerful effect on so many people,
Yeah.
it's changed lives, literally in so many ways. Because people who don't grow up with having parents like yourself who are teaching your kids about money, about mortgages, about real estate, it's a complete paradigm shift. It's a total
Yeah.
eye-opening
That business
experience.
owner concept, as opposed
Sure.
to being self-employed or an employee, like the four quadrants
Right.
concept was like, man, that was eye-opening for me. He makes it simple on paper, and then execution is a challenge. Actually, so if that's so cliche, you're familiar with Die with Zero?
I am familiar with it. It's a book that has also been mentioned on the show a couple of times. Haven't read it yet, but very familiar with the concept and love it
That's the
actually.
other one that's really changed kind of my approach over just the last couple of years
Yeah,
of make sure you're there. I lost my father pretty abruptly to a cancer situation. And, I've had a few of those eye-opening things, and a book like that helps with the perspective of,
100%.
we really got to enjoy the moment every day.
Absolutely. Third question, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
This will kind of sound funny. I'm taking a class through YPO, a business organization, like a peer networking organization
Okay.
that's at London Business School right now on negotiation.
Okay.
And the teacher of this class is like a preeminent negotiation coach around the world. And he has a class at London Business School. And I'm having such a blast. And I view myself as kind of a negotiator for a living. I mean,
Sure. Of
we
course.
negotiate for a living, right?
You're doing deals.
I'm
Absolutely. Have to
having
be.
such a blast learning about the psychology. Like, I'm tempted to go take more classes on psychology because we're working on really high level. I'm actually in the second phase of the course. Like, I did the first one last year. I'm doing a second one now.
Wow.
I still say it's a talent and skill I need to learn because I think perpetual improvement is possible in that area.
Absolutely. If you don't mind me asking, who's the expert that's teaching the course?
His name is Niro, Niro, and his last name is Sivanathan, Niro Savanathan.
Okay.
And
We'll definitely
actually,
check it out.
I'll give him a plug because he told me this week that he's writing a book, because I'm a voracious reader. And I asked him this week, hey, what else can I read on these concepts? And he said,
Mhm.
that's the point of this course, Chris.
He's
I'm
writing a
breaking
book.
down all the concepts. You don't need to go spend the hours reading the books. I'm a believer of, if somebody can spend their career in a field and write a book, I can dedicate 6, 8, 10 hours to learning their knowledge. So
Sure.
I find topics and I go deep. That's what I'm really focused on right now.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah. And I'm a big fan. Actually, one of my favorite books was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss because
Yeah,
also
Chris Voss, great book.
just the way that he has that experience of those kind of life
Yep.
changing. And I read it and then I listened to it as well. And he narrates it, which is
Yeah.
also extremely powerful, just telling the stories.
Yep.
So yeah, highly recommend that. And we'll definitely check out Nero. We'll get it in the show
Yeah,
notes over
I'll
there.
actually send you I'll send you some info on it. It's been a very impactful thing. I mean, we've taken some of the lessons and overhauled kind of our negotiation process, and I can attribute dollars to what we're taking out of the lessons of that. And
Very
it's
cool.
not like a we win and they lose. It's enlarging the pie is a phrase, I guess. So it's really
Absolutely.
cool stuff.
Very cool. Fourth and final question. What does success mean to you?
That's a great question, Yona. Today I would define success not financially, which is what I probably would have had. I used to say when people ask about political stuff, I say my affiliation is capitalism. And I guess I've matured a lot because today I think success comes from foundationally, I want to enjoy what I'm doing every day. And that's what real estate creates the wealth to give you that freedom to not have to do things you don't want to do. But
Right.
now I'm starting to see success as the ability to help others improve their situation. I'm getting more gratitude, more fulfillment out of kind of being the coach necessarily than the player within our organization. And that's what I feel like success is I'm no longer worried about me. I'm working on giving to the next generation effectively.
That's great. And I agree. That's really how it should be. So kudos to you for seeing that in that light, because that's where you really find true fulfillment, I believe. And one of my
Yeah.
definitions of success as well has a lot to do with what I can do to help others in whatever way. And you know what? Anyone can relate to that, because no matter what level you're at, you always have something to give. And you always have something to share, whether
Right.
it's knowledge or experience, time. There's so many different ways that you can go about it.
Yeah, it really is. And that really hit me like when I realized I was more excited about the wins I was creating for others
Hmm.
than myself.
For sure.
My investors actually called me out on that. I called him and I'm like, guess what you just made? And he's like, wow, what'd you make? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't even count. I was focused on the LP side of the table.
Good for you. That's awesome. Finally, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want?
Yeah. Our website, Hanson, R-E, Hanson, is probably the best platform. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and those kind of channels, but there's contact forms on our website. We're raising money. Happy to talk to investors, anytime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Really been a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun getting to know your story and learning more about what you're up to. So appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me today. It was a great time.
Awesome. And to our listeners, thank you all for joining us all the way to the end once again. And remember, until next time, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.